Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Fabiana Elise Martinez, author of 12 Random Words. Fabiana, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, the first one is very obvious. Write your book. Because I hear a lot of people saying, I'm writing a book, but then that idea never comes to completion. So first, write a book, be committed to that dream you have. And then once that is a reality, make sure that you have a product that reflects some quality, because the market is difficult. There's a lot of competition. And if you have a good quality product in your hands, you have a head start. So then I would say that they need to surround themselves with people who are willing to help and willing to encourage and willing to support that project. I know at this moment it is quite simple to try to self-publish a book, but that doesn't mean that you are going to be the only one working on that project. That is impossible. So one great advice I got when I published my first book was to have a book that, even if it was self-published, had to look as a book that was not self-published. And one of the best things was to have a great cover. And for that, and that's an investment that any writer should consider, I engaged an amazing artist, and I have, I think, a great cover. Maybe the cover is better than the book, but I tell you, that cover calls a lot of attention in Amazon, and it works. And when people look at the book, they really ask, what is this book? And creating that first question is really an advantage. So surround yourself with the best people, have a great cover, have editors. You can write a book, but your eyes will get tired and you won't see a lot of typos, errors, inconsistencies. You need editors, and you need good quality editors. And then move on and decide how you want to get published, because there are different channels and different options, and each one of them has its advantages or disadvantages. Some imply more freedom, some imply more work, some imply more decision making, but you need to find the one that works for you.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and especially when it comes to making sure that, you're right, you don't want a book to look self-published. So if you are doing it yourself, make sure that you're making two key investments. And the first is making sure that you have the most professional looking cover possible. It's going to really grab the attention of the reader. But yes, just as important is to have a well-edited book, and make sure that you outsource that. Don't try to edit it yourself. Go out there and invest the money and get a quality editor that's going to find those mistakes, because the last thing you want is to have your one shot to have a great-looking book and to have a professional-looking book and to not take advantage of that.
Of course. And also you need someone to design the book inside if you don't know how to do that, because I have seen books that were born from a very good intention, but then when you look at the pages, the text is not aligned, the font changes from chapter to chapter, and it's really hard to the eye. And a book has to be beautiful inside out, and it needs to look beautiful, no matter the subject, no matter if it's literature or self-help or advice or philosophy or whatever it is, but it needs to look good from the cover to the very last page.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, that depends on what channel you decide to choose as your publishing option. I would say, like, for a self-publishing option is, you need to write the book, you need to complete the book, you need to be brave enough to accept the corrections and suggestions of other people, because when you self-publish, basically you are on your own. So if you don't have a little humility, you may end up publishing something that you feel is great, but it's really not that great. So when you self-publish, you need to understand that you will have to learn many things. You need to deal with every single aspect of the publishing process. And what you get in return is a lot of freedom, because if you are a good learner, it's really a good way to publish a book, and you will learn a lot, and you will realize, well, maybe I don't need anybody else, or I don't need to pay a lot of money just to publish the book. Yes, for the cover and just for the editors, but not to publish the book itself. So that is one channel. So you need to be able to learn a lot of technical things that are not related to the basic action of writing the book. If you decide to go and pay someone who calls himself a publisher, but they are really more a printer who publish any book that come to their office, that's the middle option. You need to understand that those people may say they are printers, but they won't help you with any marketing, they won't help you with any press release, and basically once they printed the book, you are on your own. But you will have paid them quite a lot of money. And then you have the traditional path, which is a path that is very in turmoil right now, because the industry is changing very, very fast, and you need to get your literary agent, and then the agent will find you the right big publisher among one of those 5 or 6 big publishing houses, and that I know it's the most difficult path, but it could be the most rewarding, because they have the easy means to create publicity massively, something you can do on your own, but at a very smaller scale.
When you bring up a lot of good points about choosing those 3 different options, because there's typically there's good things and there's bad things. When you're doing it yourself, there's challenges. When you're going through a big 5 traditional publisher, you have challenges. And then what you talked about in the middle with printers too, and another way to utilize that is hybrid publishers. But you're right, because there's a lot of hybrid publishers that just want to take your money, get it out there, and then that's it. Or you'll have the traditional publishers who see that you have a big following, want to get your book out, but are not going to help you market. So it really is a tough balance. What we do is we're a hybrid publisher, and I will tell you, with my company, we don't accept everyone. We get on the phone, we take a full holistic approach with them, because it's a partnership, and it's not only for one book, but as far as I'm concerned, it's for books not only for now, but for the next 5 to 10 years down the line. And the main thing is you want to make sure that you're leading those people on the right path, and not just taking their money to print their book. Because if you don't care about someone and their books, it's going to show. And the only way to be really invested in there is to go all in with them and really to take that approach. But you're right, there's a lot of companies out there that will just essentially take your money and run. It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Yes, and there was one horrific thing that I discovered for an author, and I didn't tell her really, because it would have been too cruel. But she was convinced that she had been published by a publisher, and in a way she had certain attitude, because she considered that someone who has been self-published, was at a lower level in a literary world. Well, when I ended up discovering by complete accident, is that this publisher she so trusted was really self-publishing the books of their clients, which I'm not sure that is even legal, but they were basically using the self-publishing path in the name of their authors. And so in the end, she was as self-published as any self-published author without knowing it. And I thought that was very sad. As I said, I'm not even sure if that procedure is even legal.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point with that because when you do have a publishing company, you need to have people on your team that are professionals. And if you're
Yeah.
just trying to if you sign up with someone and they're the ones that are doing the editing, your book cover, and everything else, then you have problems. As a hybrid publisher, we have editors on our staff, we have formatters, we have book cover designers,
Yeah.
just like any other traditional publishing company would have, just a little
Yes.
different spin. But you're right, there's some people out there that
Oh
will
yeah.
literally just do all those things for you. They don't have a staff, they don't have a team, and you end up having a crappy product. That's the worst
Yes.
thing. And when you have someone that is their first book, it just leaves such a bad taste in their mouths that they're not going to want to go through that journey again.
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Yes.
Well, one thing that I know we touched on briefly that I'd like to take a little deeper dive into is about marketing. So please
Yes.
share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Well, when I decided to publish the book and I gave myself the deadline, I started planning the book launch and the website and the MailChimp list of receivers months before I finished writing the book. That's the way I push myself to finish the book and to have the cover ready. I had already booked the place where the book was going to be launched, so I didn't have an option to fail. So by the time the book was launched, we had an event in an art gallery in Dallas, and it was a quite successful event. By that time, the website was up, and that was another thing that I would suggest people who are publishing for the first time have a very good website, and that is not an expensive option, but you need to take care of the website as you took care of the cover of the book. So we had already the website, we had the launch, we had a big list of receivers who knew about the launch, and also I invested a little on a press agent who helped me to be on the paper that very Saturday when we had the launch. So people were reading about my book the morning where the launch was going to take place. So that helped a lot. The press agent for me was not an expensive option, but she helped me in a perfect way at the beginning, because she was able to connect me with some publications. And the way you work with publications is like, you create a little snowball, because once you get one article, then you can go to someone else and says, look, this magazine had me in, or this paper, or this podcast. You're not the first podcaster who is interviewing me, and I assume that is because some other people interviewed me before, and so I, in a very lucky way, and because people were helping me very nicely, I was able to start creating this little snowball. Now, this may not sound humble, but I think all this needs to be backed up with something that people perceive as a product of quality. So if there's value in your book, people will realize that there is some value they perceive. I'm not saying the book is good or bad. I'm saying people perceive value. So in my case, all these publications, some local publications, and then some magazines from other states came to interview me. And then something that helped me and was not planned at all is the Dallas Museum of Art has a very prestigious literary program, and they chose 2 stories from my book to be read by an actress in one of their events. That's something I didn't prepare. I had not dreamt that could happen, but that happened. And that helps me also to use that thing and tell magazines and tell people who are interested in the book, this happened. And then you create that, that source of articles and pictures and materials that you can share in, and this is the other element of marketing, social media. Because in the beginning, yes, you're going to be busy with going to places, to meeting people, to answering questions. But then in the end, things get a little calm. And that is when you start, using a lot of social media that you can do anytime you get a picture, anytime a reader sends you a picture, anytime they invite you to a bookstore, that helps. So, have a launch, have a very rich list of receivers or readers or possible customers that are going to receive a mail, an email, like through MailChimp, for instance. Social media, have a good website, and if your book could be sent to literary awards or any kind of award, it's a good idea to send it, because then if you win those awards, 2, 3, 5, whatever you win, that will help also to add to the snowball.
Well, one thing I'd like to touch on a little bit more is the fact that you found a press agent. So, what was your process? And if you don't mind me asking, what was your investment to hire a press agent for your book? Because it sounds like it's a great path.
It was a great path, and she's not really a professional press agent, but she's a great art agent. And when she started her own gallery, she did an amazing job of letting people in the city know that she was opening a gallery in Dallas. And what she did was so amazing that I approached her and I said, would you do with my book what you did with your own gallery? And of course, she was very generous, and we had our private agreement. But as I said, I was very lucky, and it didn't imply and a big amount of money, but she helped me to get in, because there's something we need to acknowledge. I cannot go out as a writer knocking on doors and says, "Hi, I'm a writer. Would you like to promote my book? Would you like to interview me?" I cannot do that.
Right.
So there is a little game you need to play, and when you she may send emails. Maybe I wrote the email, but my agent sends the email. So a magazine is more willing to talk with my agent before they talk to me, because I'm so important as a writer that I have an agent. So it's a little game. I like to play the game. I'm not going to change the rules of the game, but I understand that from a professional standpoint, I may not be accepted or taken seriously if I go out and says, "Hi, I wrote this book. Would you like it?" It sounds so naive. So the fact that I was working with her opened a lot of doors for me. I ended up presenting the book in France. And that was something, I would have never dreamt of. But because we exchanged some emails with people in France, and I got a little presentation in Bordeaux and a little presentation in a bookstore in Paris. And that was fantastic. But I think part of that was this game that my agent was reaching to them, and they talked to my agent first, and then they talked to me.
You are absolutely correct, and that was why I wanted to ask you that, because we with my company, we also do like press releases, and we help connect our clients with podcasts and with local radio and media. And the reason I bring that up is, we contact them, we're a publisher on behalf of this client. You're right, it definitely takes it to a prestige level where, like, wow, you've got an agent representing you, you have a publisher. You've got these people that are representing you, and it really does help make that connection, and it helps build your brand, especially when it's your first or your second or your third book. It really does help having someone representing you, because it does help you get a lot more feet in the door, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it looks more serious, and it's a game we all like to play. And of course, I am behind all those emails, and I'm checking everything, and I want to know what's going on. But there is a protocol, and I understand that, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's the way that it works, and it really does.
Well, another really cool thing about your book is it is available in multiple languages. So could you tell us about the language it's available in and how that actually all came together?
With the book, I'm a linguist and I work with languages. I always love languages. So when I started writing the stories and I wrote the stories in English, which is my second language really, and then in the process of writing the book, I decided, well, since I also teach languages, maybe I could use this as a tool for teaching of other people can use it. So I decided to make it bilingual. So since my first language is Spanish, the first version of the book was English Spanish, and I did the translation into Spanish, which is a crazy thing because usually, you don't write in your second and then translate into your first. But anyway, it was the way it was. So that was in 2016, and then I decided to move forward, and then I worked with two great French translators, and I was behind the whole process, and we published the English French version in 2017, and that is the book that I went and presented in France. And then last year, I worked with a great Portuguese translator, and we published the third version of the book, which is English Portuguese. And I'm trying to see if I can go maybe to Portugal to present the book. We'll see.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Oh, that is the most difficult question ever. It's like looking. It's like if we are looking at a constellation and you ask me which is your favorite star. Well,
Mm-hmm.
a constellation is made of stars. If I take one out, the constellation doesn't mean what it means anymore. So, I know you want a book, and I was thinking and thinking. I says, well, first of all, in which language, and first of all, from which time in my life. But I usually remember books because of the effect they have in me. Maybe I don't remember the story word by word or even the name of the characters, but I remember the effect they had in my heart. And I remember when I was 18, I read The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. And I'm always thankful that I read that magnificent novel when I was so young and I had so little experience, because I think I was more ready to face the roller coaster of love and relationships because I read that book before buying that ticket to the roller coaster. So Unbearable Lightness of Being taught me about that, about relationships, about love, about different ways of love. But also, I cannot name one author because I would put the hundreds of authors behind, and I don't want to do that. But I think I use literature to make my world more beautiful, and I also use it to learn how to write. I'm convinced that the only way to write well is to read well. There's no other way. You can take all the classes you want on creative writing. If you don't read well and you don't let those great masters of literature to permeate your heart, you won't write well. It's not a mechanical thing. It is art. And so when you dare to do it and you lower your head and you say, well, I'll do what I can, but at least you had all those masters. And that's what I try to take from literature. So do I have a favorite book? Well, I have tons of favorite books, but what I love is the constellation.
And for a final question, what is your
Yeah.
favorite quote and why?
Well, my favorite quote is a little nerdy because I was thinking about that too. And I always go back to this poem by Catullus, who was, a Roman writer from the fourth century before Christ. And he wrote a short poem in Latin, which I'm not going to read in Latin, but and he wrote this beautiful poem to his lover, and he was very concerned about the passing of time, and how we can measure in an effective way the passing of time and value every single second that fleets so fast. So he wrote this little poem, and he's suggesting his lover to count the number of kisses they give to each other, to count every second they spend together. So the quote says, give me 1,000 kisses, then another 100, then another 1,000, then a second 100, then yet another 1,000 more, then another 100. And in this disorder, this numerical disorder, I found the most beautiful, irrational order in poetry. So I love my Catullus. It's poem number 5, and that is my nerdy quote of the day.
Well, Fabiana, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
It's easy. My website is 12randomwords.com. And you can put 12 in number or in words, doesn't matter, 12randomwords.com.
Well, Fabiana, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.